Hello everybody, and welcome to another round of Area Stat Leaders. This for the football side of things through week 5 of the 2024 high school football season. I am Travis Berardi, and this edition of the Stat Leaders brought to you by, well, nobody. If you want to be a sponsor, if your business wants to sponsor these Stat Leaders, hit me up on the email account below, Travis@OH Report, and we'll try and get you set up to be this year's sponsor for the area football Stat Leaders. The Stat Leaders top 10 passing, rushing, and receiving leaders. We've played 5 weeks of football. Some of these players have been able to separate themselves from the rest, so without further ado, let's start with the top 10 passers in North Central Ohio. First off, number 1, Nicholas Parks of Seneca East, the number 1 team, tied with Mohawk at the top of the Northern 10 race. 1,335 yards on 77 completions, 15 passing touchdowns, 17.3 yards per completion. River Valley, a player that's been on this list the last few years, the All-Ohioan, he's right there at number 2 on the list. 1,317 yards, 112 completions, 13 touchdowns, 11.7 yards per completion for him. Braden DeVito from the state-ranked Shelby Whippets, sitting atop the MOAC standings with Bogpin Miller and the Ontario Warriors. 1,248 yards passing, 65 completions, just under 20 yards per completion, and 10 passing touchdowns. Now to the rest of the top 10. Number 4, Hayden Keith of the Western Reserve Rough Riders. They're fighting with Monroeville right now at the top of the conference, and St. Paul. 1,175 yards passing, 14 touchdowns, just over 17 yards per completion. Highlands Colton Stover, 1,134 yards, 73 completions. At number 6, Ashland's Nathan Bernhard, the D1 commit, the junior, 1,131 passing yards on 68 completions, 10 passing touchdowns for him. Number 7, A.J. Bauer of the Golden Knights, state-ranked in Division 6. 1,061 passing yards, the same as Mohawk's Ben Bogner, but he has one more passing touchdown. Also, A.J. Bauer's only played one full game so far this season. That crazy one against Centerburg in Week 4. He's played only one half in each of the other games, so technically he's played 3 total games if you add quarters together to get 1,061 pass yards. And I did mention Ben Bogner for Mohawk, tied atop the Northern 10 with Seneca East. He also has 1,061 yards on 14 touchdowns. Cale Lewis of Hillsdale, the number 4 team in all of Division 4 thanks to the AP poll. He has 1,005 yards on 55 completions and just over 18 yards per completion. And rounding out the top 10, Connor Pennington from Marion Harding. He has 960 passing yards on 77 completions and 9 touchdowns for the Marion Harding president signal caller. So there are the top 10 passers this week. Now it is time to show you the top 10 guys that catch those passes, some of them from those players in our top 10 receiving yardage leaders. And 2 of the top 3 are from Seneca East and the other one from Mohawk, so the Northern 10 taking the top 3 spots. Taylor Young, 600 yards receiving even on 31 catches, just over 19 yards per catch and 8 touchdowns. Kane Heyman of Mohawk behind him by 46 yards on 31 catches, the same, 18.1 yards per catch and 7 touchdowns. And Young's teammate, Bryler Beamer, 478 yards receiving on 29 catches and 4 touchdowns. So those 2 Seneca East Tigers combined for 1,078 yards of Nicholas Parks' 1,335. Loudonville's Josiah Hirschberger sits at number 4. He has 445 receiving yards on 27 catches and 2 touchdowns. Shelby's Brady Bowman, DeVito's #1 man, 424 receiving yards on 21 catches. Parker Davis of Marion Harding at #6 with 421 receiving yards. Holland Young of Hillsdale, just over 400 yards receiving at 406. Galleon's Jacob Chambers, he is at #8 for the Galleon Tigers with 356 receiving yards on 25 catches and 6 total touchdowns. River Valley's Eli Snyder, Chase Ebert's #1 man, he has 353 receiving yards. Cohen Becker of Northmore, yeah, a running back, sitting in there at the #10 spot. Not only is he putting up big numbers rushing, but he is the #1 receiver right now for A.J. Bauer. Bo landed at #11 on this list, just behind him by a few yards, but Becker right now, 347 reception yards on 17 receptions, all over 20 yards per reception, and he has 6 touchdowns for the Golden Knights. So there you have it. Most of those players, their quarterbacks are on the list, and it shows a lot of good players, a lot of state-ranked teams represented with those players. Now for the ground and pound, the top 10 rushing leaders. We always save this for last because save the best for last. We have some really big numbers coming at you right here. And the first one, Blake Elliott, his last 2 games, he has put up 606 yards in his last 2 games. Those 2 games alone would put him tied for 7th with Braden DeVito. How crazy is that? He's at 899 through the midway point of the season on 129 carries, just under 7 yards per carry and 8 touchdowns. Evan Benfer, the quarterback, the RPO quarterback, 770 yards on 69 carries and 11 touchdowns. Wyatt Denny, the running back from Cardington Lincoln, 745 yards on 76 carries, 9.8 yards per carry and 8 touchdowns. Blake Sipes, the quarterback from Fredericktown, is at 738 yards on 102 carries and 8 touchdowns. Mason Van Tilburg, that 1-2 punch with Bogpin Miller, 680 yards on the ground on only 82 carries, so he's over 8 yards per rush, and he has 10 rushing touchdowns. Anthony Evans from Winford at #6, 614 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns. Shelby's Braden DeVito, I told you he'd probably be back on this list, and he is 606 rush yards and 8 touchdowns, so he has 18 total touchdowns for him passing and rushing. Eli Steen of Cary, also at 606, but he has 1 less rushing touchdown than DeVito, so he's at 8. 106 carries, 5.7 yards per carry. Bogpin Miller of Ontario, 603 yards on only 73 carries, though, so he is at 8.26 per clip. And Colonel Crawford's Connor McMichael rounds out the top 10. 567 rushing yards on 44 carries. That's 12.8 yards per carry. Crazy numbers for him. And 8 total touchdowns. So there you have it. The first edition this season of the Area Stat Leaders, brought to you by, well, nobody. So if you would like to be a sponsor of the Area Stat Leaders, your logo will go right above where my email is, that you can message me if you want to be a sponsor for the Area Stat Leaders. But that will do it for this episode. We'll be back next week with another top 10 passing, rushing, and receiving right here.